Hi guys, today we'll be talking about stories of vampires. So let's get started. Now, I'm not a pretty huge fan of vampires, but I'm willing to tell you about this anyways. The first story, there's 3 stories in this book, and I'm going to tell you them. The first story is about a girl named Cecily. Cecily went to a ball in her rough dress. And then later, she found the man in her dream at the ball, which looked like a vampire. And they danced around feverishly, and that man didn't even seem to breathe at all, or even stepped on her toes. No sign of him. So no sign of him until maybe at Friday's ball. And then the man came back, what looked more like human. Then they came to outside, and then he revealed that he was a vampire. So Cecily ran as fast as she could into the ballroom, and then the vampire was there, and it's like, you can't escape from me, and except she had garlic in her food. Garlic! Vampires do not like garlic. So the vampire was like, garlic! And she ran away. And then there were garlic flowers all over her garden, so she decided to put them everywhere. A vampire in the village. Transylvania. So this is the story of Transylvania. This is when a woman called Clara got into a morning one day and found a man dead with no blood in it. And then the boy, who looks a bit like a vampire, came to Clara's father and asked, I'm looking for information about Mr. Gorga's murder. His voice was quite serious. I heard he was killed a few days ago. I need to know how. And Clara's father stared at him, and then the man was like, it's family business. Oh, said Clara's father in a more sympathetic tone. So he said, you must be a relative to late Mr. Gorga. And then she told the vampire person, I'm sorry, but the blood was all drained. And then the young man nodded as if expected to hear. And Clara ran away with that boy. And then Clara blinked when she saw the boy here, and then she asked, did a vampire kill Mr. Gorga? And the boy's tone was like, yes, and I'm going to hunt him. And he pulled a wooden stake out from his coat, and making Clara gasp. Clara trembled at the thought of a vampire out there in the night, but she couldn't let the stranger go alone to defend her village. I'm coming with you. I'm Clara, by the way. And the boy smiled and said, I'm Victor. Wait a minute, Victor? Wait a minute. The character in Frankenstein was like Victor Frankenstein. Whoa! And then Clara agreed. And then Clara was like, yeah, well, do you have any more of those stakes for me? Victor shook his head but pointed to the crucifix around her neck. You can use that. It'll keep you safe from that vampire. Now, crucifixes are weaknesses of vampires. And then when they saw the reflection, when they got to the mirror, she saw the reflection only of herself, no vampire. And she's like, oh no, vampires have no reflection. And then Victor grabbed her arm and, please, get off me. And then it was actually Victor's father. I see my son has brought me a snack. And Clara was like, ah. She had a crucifix, so she loosened it and then put the crucifix on the cheek of the vampire. And then that boy was killed the vampire. And let me read this part for you. Clara stared at Victor. I don't understand. Why did you do that? He's your father. You're a vampire. Victor shook his head. Not quite. He said, my father was. He looked at the pile of dust, a little sadly. But my mother was a human. I am what is known as a defier, the Humfire. I take after my father in some ways. Reflection, my strength. But you didn't inherit his taste in food. Victor smiled for the second time that night. No, he said. They strolled out into the pale morning light, arm in arm, silent for a moment. Then Clara asked, "What next?" "I'll continue my hunt. These mountains are crawling with vampires," said Victor. He paused. "Perhaps you'll join me? Perhaps I will." As they walked together down the mountainside, Clara felt excitement fizzling inside. Of course, she joined him. There was only one thing troubling her. How on earth, she wondered, am I going to explain this to my father? His father was like anti-vampire. Now, third story, Iceland now! The 21st century. This is about the story of a boy named James who went to school, and there was a flashback. There's a flashback here. James' family was killed. Van's family was attacked by vampires once. By very old vampires. James and his father escaped unharmed, but his mother didn't. She was killed. So Velvet was their latest stunt. So after that, James' father devoted his life to kill all of these creatures, beasts. As soon as James was old enough, he joined him. Velvet was allowed to stop. There were some newspaper columns of some strange reports disappearing. And his father thought it was because of vampires, so they were from New York to Dalvik within a week. As James was being introduced to his new classmate, he knew his father was searching for vampire layers. So like he was like, "Does anybody know who these guys are? Icelandic. Some of them might be vampires." "I'm Lara," she whispered. And then she whispered, "I'm Lara." And then she was like, "Are you American?" And she was chatty. And then like James' mind whispered, went it off. "Where's Dad?" "He's probably in some kind of cave right now." And later she got a crucifix around his neck, and Lara was like, when she saw it, she shivered. And then he knew what Lara was. She was a vampire. She was a vampire. And the vampires started attacking them. And then like James' father came and killed one of the vampires, and killed one of those vampires, and James was calm and actually killed a vampire without knowing that he would be killed. Like this. See, there's the red plunge, and like the crossbow was aimed at Lara, but then Lara just ran into a vampire. And she knocked the vampire over, and then like the vampire was like, "Traitor!" And then the vampire was shot in the heart. Lara kept her secret as a vampire, and then later they talked in silence, mutterings, since Lara could understand it. So yeah, they became friends, and from then on, they became vampire hunters. So yeah, that's basically it for today's story. I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I did, and I'll see you next time. ShenSean out. Peace! Peace too!